They've done all these things. You need to be watchful for them. You need to be careful. And you don't need to grab a hold of these men. You need to stay away from them. But you need to pray for them. Now, it's okay to have separation. Biblical separation from an individual. It don't mean just because someone labels himself a Christian, and they might very well be. Amen? But they might be sideways. And they might be full of malice and contentment and bitter. Sometimes a Christian that is backslidden, if you want to use that word, is worse than a lost person to hang around. They really are. Because they won't stop until you either get them back to where they need to be, or they bring you down to where they're at. They're not going to stop. Not. And more times than not, they bring us down. Over and over again. So he said, watch out for them. Stay away from them, but pray for them. Pray for them. Pray for them. He said, don't go have coffee with them. Don't go out to dinner with them. Don't go hang out with them. Don't go to their house, but pray for them. That's how we go through it. He said, we got to go on through forgiveness. You got to. Not only that, we see in verse 17. He said, all have forsaken me in verse 16. He said, I pray for them. So there's Paul all alone. He said, notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me. So he's there all alone in prison. Now he had seen this happen over and over again as he's scattered out there in the midst of the ocean. He said he was out in the deep and all these things, and God was with him. He was in prison and the bars fell off the doors and all those things in the book of Acts. So he's seen God's mighty work over and over again. But now he's at the end of his race and he's all by himself. He's all alone. He don't have a little preacher boy following him around. He can't turn to Timothy and speak to him. He's all by himself. And he said, notwithstanding though, Timothy, I'm going to show you something right here. He's writing to him, letting him know that in the middle of the darkest night of his life, when he's coming down to his death, he's coming down to his persecution, amen, and his time that they're going to put him to death. He said, notwithstanding, though every man and woman have forsaken me, the Lord stood with me. He was letting Timothy know that no matter what you'll face in life, no matter what goes on, here I am at the end of my race, the darkest night, all alone, facing all these things that I don't know what's about to happen. And death is surely right around the corner. What was he able to tell Timothy? I must go on because I have a friend, amen, that sticketh closer than a brother. He said, notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me. He didn't say I was all alone. Everybody's left me. I'm going to go on anyways. But he said somewhere, and what happened to Paul? Somewhere in the middle of that darkness, somewhere in the middle of that depressing time, he heard a still small voice. Somewhere in the middle of that lonely time, Paul got down to talk to the Lord, and the Lord started talking back. Church, he is no respecter of persons. If you're a child of God, you're one of his. No matter how dark the night gets, how lonely we get, and no matter how afraid we are, and no matter how certain we are of tomorrow, and no doubt he had to be uncertain of some things. He couldn't see. He said, I've got a friend in the midst of this darkness. I've got a friend in the midst of this jail. He said, they think they put me in here all alone. They think they put me in here and locked me up in solitary. But notwithstanding, the Lord had stood with me, just like the 3 Hebrew children. In the midst of the fire, they looked and I see 4 men. Amen. If they had cracked open that jail cell and looked inside, they would have saw 2. Why? Because the Lord stood with him. And God's presence was all around him. Letting him know that he had not forsaken him and that God was going to stay with him and walk with him all the way to old Chile, Jordan, and let him usher him across the other side. Every time. He said, I've got to go on because I've got a friend. You might be forsaken by everybody in your life. You might have those hurt you. We might have those let us down. But God will never let us down. God will never forsake us. He said, I know we preached about it. I know they've written about it. I know they went through the Gospels talking about it. Amen. In John 14, he sent us another comforter. But he was letting Timothy know, I've lived it out, and now I'm about to die, and I want to let you know that God has not forsaken me. I've got down to the end of my death, right here at the very last lap. I'm glad to know, because this life can throw a lot of things at us, church.
Oh, yeah.
It can throw a lot of trials, troubles, amen, a lot of disasters. But God will stand with us through every one of them. We get down to the bitter end, and God's there, amen. It don't have to be the bitter end. I'm glad that if you're saved by the grace of God, it's no longer the bitter end. Paul was letting you know, if you're born again, it's not the bitter end. It's just the beginning. He's there to usher us on over from this side to the other side. Amen. We'll say goodbye to this world, hell up to the other. And God's going to usher us in. We don't have to cross over by ourselves. He said, but we got a friend. And God will stand with you through every dark hour of the night. Amen. 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 Ain't you glad? Not only does he have a friend, we see in verse number 17. In verse number 17, the Bible says, notwithstanding the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, and that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion. He said, I got to keep going until God says it's over. He said, not until I say it's over. Not until I say I'm quitting. But he said, I must go on because of those that follow. Many of us in here, you've been fighting this fight for a long time. You've been at it for a while. No doubt there's been times in your Christian life you want to throw in the towel. No doubt there's been times when you want to say, I'm done. I've had enough of this. But I challenge you today to grasp the attitude that we must go on no matter what comes. We must go on no matter what we face. We must go on no matter what Monday comes. And it's obvious that many of you in here grabbed a hold of that attitude a long time ago. Amen. You've been faithful soldiers in the house of God and the army of God for a long time. Because you got that, I'm not going to quit. Come hell or high water, I'm going to serve the Lord. As for me and my house, amen, I'm going to stand for the Lord. If He'll give me the grace and He'll give me the strength, I'm going to stand with Him. Amen. And you have. It's time for the younger generation to grab a hold of that. We need to grab a hold of it. We got to grab a hold of it. Amen. We're going to raise our families for God. We're going to serve the Lord no matter what comes, no matter what arises. That no matter what, amen, what we face, our families, our children are going to know who God is, and we're going to raise them in the house of God, and we're going to raise them up in the fear of the Lord. No matter what the world says, what the world does, it's always mixed up, but we're going to serve them and put them in the house of God. Amen. But he said, I must go on because of those that follow. Many of y'all have been great examples to the generation coming up. I challenge you to finish your course so that we can watch and see we finish our course. You got to finish. You got to finish. Well, you watched any of the football games yesterday? Well, that was ugly what the Gators put out there, wasn't it? Ugly. Ooh, that was ugly. Some of them other games was ugly. But you know what all those little tight end of the game heroics had in common? They played sloppy through the middle of the game. They started out, boy, they was pounding the line of scrimmage, and then they went sloppy. But at the end of the game, what they do? They finished. They finished. It was ugly, but you know what it was? It was a win. They finished. They could have easily said, man, this is just a bust, and give up. But they got the attitude that, no, we don't come too far. We've done fought too hard. We done went through 2 days in the middle of the summer. And we went through all the exercises, and we don't fought. We're right here. The crown for the SEC East is right in front of us. We don't fought too hard. Many of us in here, boy, when you fought too hard to give up now. You've been through too much to stop now. You've seen too much to stop now. You've faced too much to stop now. Why in the world would you even look somewhere to get off? You've been through it and out the other side. Amen. And God has stood with you every mile of the trip. I say keep on walking. And it might have got sloppy somewhere in the middle. And you might have got off course somewhere along the way. But I say finish. Finish your course this morning. Amen. Strap it on and finish It might have got sloppy in your life with God.
That's right.
Amen. But finish it. Finish it. And some of us just starting out strong, full of zeal, want to do something. The first little adversity comes along and kicks us in the teeth. Don't look for somewhere to quit. Don't look for somewhere to get off and stop and say, I'm done. Well, we have boys like that in high school. They wanted to play football and they put on them leather jackets. They just wanted to have a jacket. Walk around. They were part of the team. Coach would throw them out there. Coach would put them out there, and the first time they got smacked real hard, they run to the sideline.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't want no more. I don't want no more, Coach. A lot of Christians are that way.
Yes.
You say, well, you just don't know. I'm not making light of your tragedies. I'm not making light of what you may have been through. I'm not. But look what Paul went through. Now, I'm not preaching about look at me. Look at Paul. All right? Look what he went through. And God stood with him. And Paul was not perfect. He said, I'm chiefest among sinners. He didn't say that to brag. He wasn't saying that to sound humble because he really wasn't. Paul, I believe, was a honest person. I don't believe that, as the Bible tells us how the Word of God was written, I can't quote it right now, but it slipped my mind, but they spoke as they were inspired by the Holy Spirit of God. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God. Inspired. That means God's breath breathed upon them. God showed them and told them what to write. So I don't think he was lying when he said, I'm chiefest among sinners. He's chiefest among sinners. He said, but I must go on. I must finish my course. I got to finish. Why? Because of those that follow. Many of us in here have young children. Many of us in here have grandchildren. Some have great-grandchildren. Some might have great-great-grandchildren. Why do you need to finish? Why do you have to adapt the attitude, I must go on? Or grab a hold of it even stronger. Because of the ones that follow. The ones that have their eyes on you and us. The ones that are going to need a place of worship and a place to come and hear the Word of God and feel the presence of God and know what worship is and know what it's like to be saved. Amen. To know what it's like to have a well where they can come and draw water from. That's why. That's why we do it. And we're not just here playing church. We're not just here doing that. I mean, I'm not. We're here so we can continue to build upon what was laid 3 or 4 decades ago and continue to grow. For those that follow, we must go on. We must go on. We must go on. I'll close here. Brother Philip, you come. Miss Teresa, you want to come get a song? We must go on because of those that follow. And lastly, verse number 18. Look at verse 18. Paul said this, and the Lord shall deliver me from every evil work and will preserve me unto his heavenly kingdom, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. Look how Paul's writing and saying. Look what his attitude is. I mean, he's not just sitting there. He's not in the upper room of some condo on a beach, retired, writing these great words of grace and encouragement. Paul is in a lowly state. He's in a place that most of us would be shaking and fearing and trembling. He's in prison in darkness. But he's talking about where he's going and how God's going to deliver him, how God's going to preserve him. He's letting you know, he said, hey, this ain't my final resting place. This is not where it ends for me. See, Paul didn't just say those words. Paul didn't just sing about those words. Paul didn't just write about those words. Paul believed them. He believed them. He said, Timothy, we must go on because we have a future. This is just temporary down here. This is just a little vapor. He said, but we got a future up in glory. We got a place waiting on us. We must go home because God has done preserved us. And we got a mansion waiting for us on the other side. And I want to be able to go and not stand before him empty-handed. But I want to go, amen, and be able to present something to the Lord. They say, God, I tried and I did my best. I did my best, though I failed and I made a mess of it at times. And somewhere in the middle of the game, it got sloppy. But God, when I got down to the end of my race, amen, I finished. And I finished as strong as I could. When it got weak, I dug a little deeper. And God, you breathed your breath on me one more time. I know I got weak in the middle of it. But God, I want to finish strong. And that's what I want us to do today, church. Times are running out. Amen. We're getting down to the end of our race. And this life is about to be over. And this world's coming to an end. Let's finish strong. Let's quit coasting. And let's grab another gear and finish strong. I preached a message one time on being a second-mile Christian. Over there, I believe it's the book of Matthew. You talk about if a man asks you to go a mile, you go with him. If he asks you to go 2, you go with him 2 miles. I'm asking you to go another mile. Don't be a first-mile Christian, be a second-mile. We must go on. But the only way it's going to happen is if we learn how to forgive. We remember we have a future. Remember who we're following. And we remember who's following us. Remember who's following us. I'll close with this illustration right here as they begin to play. A young preacher had preached. He had preached sometime at a place, and man, they just loved him, and he'd built up a good work. And the Lord called him all the way across the other side of the country to go start another work. And he was sad about it, and his wife was sad about it, and church was sad about it. They all loved him, man. They said, the Lord's really moving. And he went to say his goodbyes at the church, and he preached his last sermon and went to walk out. And he said, I packed up all my stuff. We're all packed up. I believe I got all my possessions, and I hope we don't leave nothing behind. You know how you do when you travel. You always think you're forgetting something and you're going to left something. Most of the time you don't, but you spend half the time worried about it. He said, my wife's worried, I hope we hadn't left nothing. And he got about all the way to the back, and an elderly lady grabbed his hand and said, son, there's one thing that you left behind that you just can't take with you. He said, what's that, ma'am? She said, it's your influence. Pack up all your belongings, but your influence will stay with this church forever. Whether you know it or not, we influence people in our lives. We have an impact on those around us. We have an impact on those that we go to work with. We have an impact on our children. And when we leave this world, we're not taking nothing with us. But we sure are leaving behind an influence. And I ask you today, what kind of influence are you leaving behind? If you were to say goodbye today to this world, are you happy with the race you ran? Have you stopped? Or are you going to go ahead and say, I must go on and keep going? And I ask you, what kind of influence have you left behind? Today was your last day. What kind of influence have you left behind? What kind of influence have you left behind? Let's stand. These altars are open. You need to pray.